Okay, so this essay was originally something I was just doing on my own time, and it was so fun that I decided to start writing it down, and it became this, which is an 8-page essay. What I want to do is take this little book that they found next to Balin's tomb that was kind of hard to read and had words covered with blood and guts, and I just want to process that out loud for myself for what is going on. I essentially just want to walk line by line through it and figure out what is happening. Because on my first read, some of it was obvious and some of it was less obvious, but when I reread that chapter, I found things to be really, really fascinating and I had a lot of questions. But I'm gonna pull out my map and see what happened and where I can fill in all the gaps, and I kind of figured rather than just do this by myself, I'll let you all into my little mind caves and you can help fill in the gaps if you know. So, comment without spoilers as much as you can where I might be right and wrong in this one. And as always, make sure you like the video and subscribe, as I am reading through Lord of the Rings for the first time and publishing video essays whenever I find something interesting that I want to talk about, which I find something interesting quite often, and it's turned into multiple video essays per chapter. So if you're into that sort of thing, subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, you can become a member as well, which will give you early access to the videos. And when I start reading the second book, we'll probably give you access to some member-only content as well. And ultimately, I am looking to start a book club too with the members for the Lord of the Rings, so whenever that gets started in the next few weeks or months, that'll be another perk. But let's break this book down. So they found it at Balin's tomb, and it was messed up. This chapter says, all had been broken and plundered, but beside the shattered lid of one there lay remains of a book. It had been slashed and stabbed and partly burned, and was so stained with black and other dark marks like old blood that little of it could be read. But we're going to map this whole thing out of what we get in the books. The first thing that Gandalf says after reading for a bit is that the top page is marked 1, 3. So at least 2 are missing from the beginning, which is just a bummer. That's so sad to me. But here's the first line that we get. We drove out orcs from the great gate and guard. I think the next word is blurred and burned. Probably room. So this seems very self-explanatory to me, that the dwarves came back and they came through the Dimrill Dale. That's really the only thing that makes sense if they came up from the Iron Hills in Erebor. If they're coming from east to west, the Dimrill Dale is the valley east of Moria, which feels like the main entrance. The Western Gate, or the Holland Gate, I believe it's called, is the one on the west side that they entered with the Watcher. But we'll get there. But so far they have come into Moria from the Great Gate, the East Gate, where the Dimrill Dale is, where the Fellowship leaves out of Moria. It's also kind of shocking to me that immediately they hit resistance even at the very first gate. I feel like the orcs would have been hiding a bit deeper, but maybe they were just in the first few chambers to start. Anyway, Balin and company, I want to know how many he went with so badly too. I'd probably guess around like 500 to 1,000, but I don't know. But they come back and take arguably the most important thing to take, which is the whole front chamber of the Eastern Gate. If they can take that up to the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, the numbers don't matter and they can fight on the bridge. Such a fascinating idea for the bridge. The next line. We slew many in the bright, I think, sun in the dale. This seems to be paired up, but I think this line would have come first rather than at the gate. I was confused by that, but I guess this is just the recorder putting down all things kind of at once. But orcs being outside in the Dimrill Dale is interesting to me. Again, I don't know a ton about the idea of orcs being in the sun, but I thought that was an issue for them. Wasn't it a revolution when Saruman's army was marching under the sun? So either these orcs were evolved orcs, perhaps not even from Mordor, but I don't really think so. Maybe they're from Dol Guldur, I can't really say that very fast. Or, which I think might be more likely, these orcs were probably so terrified of moving back deeper into Moria because of the Balrog that they might have known. So they kind of just started running around into the open sun in order to avoid it. And the dwarves slew many in the open sun that were just running around. It sounds chaotic, but the dwarves are doing great so far. Until the very next line. Floy was killed by an arrow. He slew the great. There is a blur followed by Floy under grass near Miramir. That is sad. I feel like if they are going with limited numbers, then they just cannot afford any losses. But this seems like the very first battle that's happening. So just one loss perhaps isn't too bad. Or maybe many more were lost, but Floy was just a more important dwarf, so he was like the only one that was recognized. But he did slay the great, I'm not sure. I feel like this might be the great general orc, or perhaps the great cave troll. Whatever it was, I love that he went down defeating something great. And may he rest under the grass of Miramir. Dwarves are great. Honoring Floy by giving him a beautiful burial under the grass is something that is perhaps one of the most sacred things in Dwarven culture. Again, I don't know a ton about Dwarven culture, but the Miramir feels like it's a holy thing to be revered. Then the book says, the next line or two I cannot read. Then comes, we have taken the 21st hall of North End to dwell in. This is a fantastic bit of information, because let's look at this map here. And I'm also kind of flat out assuming that this map is canon, but I'm probably very wrong about that. But bear with me. It seems like the only way to the North End is via the bridge. So that would mean the dwarves in their first year have seized control of the eastern gate, have moved across to the west, and have seized control of, I would say, numerous chambers and halls. If they are actually dwelling and living in one of these chambers, it seems very likely that they have taken more than just that hall. Or maybe they snuck into that chamber unknown and have fortified it, and they're just kind of barely staying alive as a colony. I think I like the first one better because it actually shows the recolonization of Moria is going decently well so far. The next line reads, there is, I cannot read what, a shaft is mentioned. Then Balin set up his seat in the chamber of Mazarbul. This actually makes me revert my thought above, and I kind of think now this is just a hideout for them a bit. Perhaps they fought and battled their way through things, and then got to a place where they were just able to find a good shaft that became a home for them. Or maybe they really took out the main force of orcs and that they didn't need to worry so much more about the rest of the orcs. But this also tells me that the shaft is a good place where at the very, very least, they're getting ventilated air. And even more, could be a place where they could possibly escape if it leads to open air. But for some reason, dwarf shafts only seem like ventilation for me. Like in my weird brain, I think there are only two main entrances into Moria, the Dimril Dale and the Holland Gate. I might be totally wrong about that. But anyway, Balin setting up his seat means that it appears he's ruling Moria in some capacity. They are likely setting the things up they need to survive. And random thought, but what are the dwarves eating up at this point? Do they hunt, fish? How are they getting food? Anyway, Balin has his seat set up in the chamber. Seems like this is the location where they are going to expand from here, which is interesting. I might have thought if they were recolonizing that they set up shop in the whole eastern gate section. You have access to the outside world, you can come and go as you please, and the bridge is your greatest ally. It almost ensures that you won't be overtaken in the night. But I guess the dwarves know more than me and decided the northernmost halls are better. Oh, also Gimli says, the Chamber of Records, said Gimli. I guess that is where we now stand. So Mazarbul was the Chamber of Records of Moria, which makes me think to some extent that they needed to go to the chambers to see the records of previous things that happened originally in Moria. Maybe they completely lost their bearing and their maps of Moria and needed this for their ability to plot and plan their colony. It seems like a good starting point. The next paragraph is all disjointed, but we can make a lot out of it. Well, I can read no more for a long way, said Gandalf, except the word gold, and Durin's axe, and something helm. So, the first thing is that either they found gold or they didn't find gold, and I'm guessing that they found it again, which is great news for the colony, but also insanely ominous in that they found the very place where it seems Durin had died and been slayed by the Balrog. Because it seems like they found Durin's axe and potentially Durin's helm. But the helm one I'm not too sure about. Then we get this. Then Balin is now Lord of Moria. It kind of feels like whoever holds the axe of Durin is the rightful king of Moria. So potentially they killed this orc who was wielding the axe, maybe? But I kind of like the idea that they found it. Kind of like the Ark of the Covenant vibe. Or even like the Darksaber kind of vibe from Star Wars. Then we have this. That seems to end a chapter. After some stars, another hand begins. And I can see we have found true silver. And later the word well-forged, and then something, I have it, mithril. Another hand is sad. It either is that the original writer died, which means more people are dying than they are putting in the book, or maybe they just have more than one record keeper. I think it would probably be important to have more than one record keeper, so I'll go with that. But hey, they found mithril. And the word Wellforged, which is bizarre to me. I don't know what that could mean. Either it's a place in Moria, or perhaps they relit the forges in Moria in order to begin forging mithril again, or maybe they found mithril armor that is well forged. I don't know, that one is kind of throwing me for a loop a bit. And the last two lines in this section. Oin to seek for the upper armories of Third Deep. Something go westward, a blur to Holland Gate. So, Oin seems to have been sent on a mission to go to the armories of the Third Deep. Maybe that's where they found the records of the best armor and weapons there, and they will for sure need it. This whole thing also feels like they are constantly battling orcs because they seem to need weapons and armor if they are looking for the armories. And this armory just seems like it's westward to the Holland Gate. That's all my interpretation of it is. But perhaps they also had to go on another dwarf mission to the Western Gate. That honestly would be a terrifying mission to do alone. Then this is the new section's beginning. Gandalf paused and set a few leaves aside. There are several pages of the same sort, rather hastily written and much damaged, he said. But I can make little of them in this light. Now there must be a number of leaves missing because they begin to be numbered 5. The 5th year of the colony, I suppose. Let me see. No, they are too cut and stained. I cannot read them. We might do better in the sunlight. Wait. Here is something. A large, bold hand using an elvish script. That would be Ori's hand, said Gimli, looking over the wizard's arm. He could write well and speedily, and often used the elvish characters. I fear he had ill tidings to record in a fair hand, said Gandalf. The first clear word is sorrow, but the rest of the line is lost. Ori seems like the record keeper here, but very sad that these years are cut off. But the 5th year of the colony is amazing. This is settling in. It's also kind of crazy that the Fellowship finds the Balrog and they've been in the mines for only a few days. When this collection of dwarves were there for 5 years and probably never saw the Balrog. Maybe they did, but the records don't seem to imply that. But very sad that this is a year filled with sorrow, and the source of this sorrow in this year is shocking to me. It says, yesterday being the 10th of November, Balin, Lord of Moria, fell in Dimrill Dale. He went alone to look in Miramir. An orc shot him from behind a stone. We slew the orc, but many more, up from east up the Silverlode. Now, this is a gold mine of information and is going to make me rethink a lot of what I talked about before. So, the first and most important is that the Dwarven colony must have been significantly more established. I say that for 2 reasons. The first is that Balin, just taking a walk alone to the Miramir is something you do not do if you are besieged at all times. I do think it was foolish for him to do that, but that's a bummer. And then you have the orcs who are coming east from the Silverlode. I'd probably guess these orcs are coming from Dol Guldur, but I could be wrong about that. Them coming that way seems like they want to retake Moria now, which means the dwarves had won and were doing well for 5 years before a larger force of orcs took them out. I'm not sure if these orcs were waiting around and scouting when Balin popped out alone, when they shot him in the back, which cowardly, but then they began their invasion of Moria. The next section says, the remainder of the page is so blurred that I can hardly make out anything. But I think I can read, we have barred the gates, and then can hold them long if, and perhaps horrible and suffer. Have they barred the eastern gate? Or have they perhaps barred some other chamber gate? I think I'd say the eastern gate because I'd say that the words horrible and suffer relate to that fact. Ooh, and a very dark thought that I had. What if the arrow didn't kill Balin and they just tortured him for leverage in order to gain access and disbar the gates of Moria? That might be the case, but that would be awful. But I am curious what the other sentence was going to end with. They can hold them long if what? I don't even have a guess. So tell me in the comments what you think this would actually be and what would happen here, because I am lost for that one. How would they be able to hold them long if what? If maybe their armories don't run out? I don't know. Then we get the last paragraph of information, which is tragic. It's grim reading, he said. I fear their end was cruel. Listen, we cannot get out. We cannot get out. They have taken the bridge in the second hall. Frar and Lonnie and Nali fell there. There are 4 lines smeared so that I can only read went 5 days ago. The last lines run the pool is up to the wall at Westgate. The watcher in the water took Owen. We cannot get out. The end comes, and then drums. Drums in the deep. I wonder what that means. The last thing written is in a trailing scrawl of elf letters. They are coming. So, they were not able to hold the gate for long, I guess. Perhaps they really did have Balin captive and were threatening the dwarves with the desecration of Balin's body. Dwarves buried people by the Mirror and seemed to have a very sacred and holy culture, so maybe this was enough to break them, and they opened the gates for a fight. But the orcs pushed them back. They win the bridge, which is devastating because that is like the biggest defense that these dwarves have. Then they win one hall, then the second. 2 more dwarves die. I also kind of find it funny that these dwarves are all fighting and that there is just one in the background taking notes. I know that's not how it went, but funny to think about. But how can I joke at a time like this? I gotta get back on focus. This paragraph is truly terrible and so sad. It seems like the whole colony left 5 days ago and they are flying east as they run from the orcs. They get there and it's flooded up to the gate, which is devastating. They are trapped. Not surrounded by orcs, but they cannot go back for fear of running into the orcs, who likely outnumber them. And they cannot go across the water for fear the Watcher will take them. And so the dwarves are just sitting there, waiting for their end. And the drums come. But my final thought is this. The one I would love some answers on. I just asked this in our Discord too, and I'm very curious from the answers that it would be. But do the drums signal battle for the orcs, or do the drums from the deep summon the Balrog? First, I'm not sure because the Balrog just doesn't seem like he could be summoned, but maybe he's like a sandworm in Dune that doesn't like noise and just wants to kill anything that makes noise. Thus, the drums played makes the Balrog come. I feel like they were maybe just killed by orcs, but the drums being from the deep is the thing that is so unsettling about this whole journey. I think it probably just means that the drums show the orcs are near, because the last lines were written in quick scrawling letters. And I can imagine Ori, who was a member of Bilbo's entourage, which is even more tragic, writes this down quickly, and picks his axe up to fight, to the death. And he dies, defending both his honor and his fellow dwarves in battle. Utterly tragic. And this is a bit strange, but I feel like I need to end this video with some kind of way that honors the dwarves. I was going to sing this, but I'll spare you. I want to recite the Song of Durin to end this video. The world was young, the mountains green. No stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone. When Durin woke and walked alone, he named the nameless hills and dells. He drank from yet untasted wells. He stooped and looked in mirror, and saw a crown of stars appear, as gems upon a silver thread, above the shadow of his head. The world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days before the fall of mighty kings in Nargothrond, and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. The world was fair in Durin's day. A king he was on carven throne, in many pillared halls of stone, with golden roof and silver floor, and runes of power upon the door. The light of sun and star and moon, and shining lamps of crystal hewn, undimmed by cloud or shade of night. There shone forever, fair and bright. Their hammer on the anvil smote, their chisel clove and graver wrote. There forged was blade, and bound was hilt. The delver mined, the mason built. There beryl, pearl, and opal pale, and metal wrought like fish's mail. Buckler and corset, axe and sword, and shining spears were laid in hoard. Unwearied then were Durin's folk. Beneath the mountains music woke. The harpers harped, the minstrels sang, and at the gates the trumpets rang. The world is gray, the mountains old. The forge's fire is ashen cold. No harp is rung, no hammer falls. The darkness dwells in Durin's halls. The shadow lies upon his tomb. In Moria, in Khazad-dûm. But still the sunken stars appear. In dark and windless Mirror. There lies his crown in water deep, till Durin wakes again from sleep.